And I'm very pleased to introduce you to Tony Sekulich, who is going to speak to us tonight about script writing and which are script editing and script writing. He is a screenplay writer and a script editor. And he's also been a journalist, and he edits novels as well. So he's going to talk a little bit about what it takes to edit scripts. So, Tony, you want to come on?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for coming tonight. It's great to see everyone here. Yeah, so I was told that I should start off talking about how I transitioned from starting off as a reporter and editor in journalism into the Canadian film and television industry. And the short answer is poor life choices. I think that's, no, it's, actually it's funny, because I did start off as a newspaper reporter. I did a journalism degree at the University of King's College, and my first job was at the Olds Gazette in Olds, Alberta, which was a small family-owned weekly newspaper in rural Alberta. And for me, that was a real culture shock. So, you know, because when I was in J school, of course, you know, I envisioned that my professional future would be like Woodward and Bernstein. And then I'm in Olds, and Olds was a great place to live and work, because I got to write everything, but you have to write everything, you know. And one of the our publisher, Brian, great guy, love working for him. He would always send me out for stories that I didn't think were stories, right? You know, he'd say, you know, Bill Johnson's building a new back deck. Go do a story on it. I'm like, come on, like, yeah, I have 2 degrees. I'm a professional journalist, you know. And so this one day, he said, one of the farmers is building birdhouses on his land. Go do a story on it. And this time, now I've just had it. I've just lived it. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm in my car. I'm driving all the way. This is a total waste of time. I don't want to do this. This isn't a story. There's nothing here, you know. And this is literally what I'm saying to myself as I'm driving, you know, the whole time. So I get there, and you know, I'm like, all right, let's talk. Let's go. You know, so we're talking. I'm like, yeah, okay. You know, next question. And I said, so tell me why putting up birdhouses? And he goes, well, you know, I've been a farmer all my life, and we used to use this chemical called, I actually forget what it's called now, but he said, we used it in the 40s and 50s, and it basically nearly killed out the entire bluebird population of Alberta. So I figured, now that I'm retired, I should probably owe whatever time I have left trying to bring them back. And I stopped. I stopped dead in my tracks, and I was like, wait a minute, this is a story. I was like, there's a story here. At the time, I couldn't articulate why it was a story. It's just something, I think a lot of people in this room know what happens. This bell goes off in your head, and it's a story bell, and you go, this is a story. So I went back, I wrote it, they put it on the front page, and it was nominated for an AWNA award. I didn't win, I got hosed, but that's the, you know, that was it. But it was that experience of that story bell that really fascinated me. And then over time, I wanted to dabble into creative writing. I wanted to, you know, create my own stories, but I didn't really know how. I really wasn't sure what format I was going to take, because I couldn't picture myself as a novelist, because I said I was born without the gene that allows me to describe a tree over 3 pages. So I just said that I didn't do that. And then I discovered screenwriting, and screenwriting was something that really was fascinating to me. And because it was just about telling a story. It didn't have to be a lot of, you know, superfluous description. So I joined the film co-op when I moved back to New Brunswick, and I had submitted a script, a feature script that was accepted into the Atlantic Film Festival script development program. This was part of the film festival, and what they did was they would take 4 writers every year and work with a professional story editor and make the script better. So in the fall of 2001, I got to work with Al McGee, who was still is, one of the top story editors and producers. And this was an absolutely fascinating experience for me. This was the first time that I was working with a real story editor, and I had that experience, because before anything I would write, and you take it to these writers groups where other writers give you feedback, and see this, I don't have to finish that, right? You guys know, they just want to let their inner critic out and just, to stomp all over it. So, I was kind of bracing myself. This first session, sitting down with Al, I'm just like, oh boy, here it comes, And Al was so amazing. He started off and he started talking about what he loved about it, and all the things that worked. And I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. I said, oh, okay, but now here it comes. Now that he's done that, here comes the boom, right? The next. And then what he did was he just started asking me questions about it. Why does this character do this, and why did this person go there? And so I answered, and some things I had good answers for, and some things I didn't, and that was revealing. And we went this whole process, and it was really, really amazing. It made the script better. And afterwards, I was driving home, and I realized at no point in the process did he say what I don't like about this, And I always remember that. So anyway. Al was also one of the gatekeepers here in Toronto at the CFC, the Film Center, and so we talked about whether I would be a good candidate, and he said, yeah, you should apply. And I said, oh, okay, that's great. When's the deadline? He said, about 3 weeks ago. And I was like, I said, nah, send an application, whatever. And so I sent an application, and in January of 2002, I moved to Toronto to do the professional screenwriting program here at the Canadian Film Center. An amazing experience. Really, really, opened up doors afterwards. After I graduated, the first professional job I was hired for was to adapt a Stevie Cameron book, Blue Trust, into a feature script for a producer who had optioned that here in town, and I was hired to write for a CTV show, Robson Arms, which was to 2005. If you've seen it, you're in a very, very small minority. They put us on Friday nights in the summer, in July. I mean, it's like they were daring people to watch it. But this is being recorded. Damn. No, it was great. But after that is when the real sort of story design work happened, which is what Al had hired me to basically give notes on some of the feature scripts that he was being hired to give notes on, and for him it was just someone else that he trusted, just to give it a second set of eyes and just to kind of see if opinions jived. And for me though, what it became is it became a master class in story design, because I got to read over a couple of year period 25 to 30 feature film scripts, many of which hit theaters here or were on TV or whatnot, and that was really, really interesting, because as I went through it, I would give my thoughts, and after I did about 6 or 7 or 8, I started to see that there was a pattern emerging. It was that these scripts, what was the problems I was finding with them, were all being repeated, again and again. So and it felt like by about the 20th script, I felt like he could give me the script and I could say, thanks a lot. Here are the notes. I don't even have to read it. And anyway, I have them written down here. I came up with a list of what these common problems were. It's like what kept holding this back. And I wish I had time to basically go into detail on them, but basically the list of script problems that I came from this, like I said, this unofficial masterclass that I was doing is this. These are the questions I would ask. Is there a clear protagonist? And by the way, some of these are going to seem mind-numbingly obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many professional top-level scriptwriters keep walking into these time and time again. So many times there's a script. What's it about? It's about this country club and the goings-on there. No, it's not. It's just stories are about people, right? So, it's not about the country club. It's not about an institution. It's not about a group. So many times you would have these scripts, and the problem with it wasn't about anyone. There was no protagonist to pull the audience in. Does the protagonist have a clear mission? If I had a nickel for every script where nothing happens in it, it would be amazing. So the stories are active, they're dynamic. It's about a protagonist, and the protagonist has to have a mission. They have to be trying to do something. It's amazing how many scripts fail there. Are there stakes involved? This is really, really simple. You cannot have drama if you don't have stakes, if there are no consequences. And you can make any situation dramatic if you just simply add stakes to it. For example, if I said, after this meeting, stick around because I'm going to put a coffee cup on my head and see if I can walk from one of the room to the other without falling off. Probably not too many people are sticking around. Why would you care? Unless I said, if I do it, everybody in the room gets $50,000. And if I don't, if it falls off, I found a way to drain all your bank accounts. So now, I promise you that 37 seconds it takes me to walk from here to there will be the most edge of your seat, hold your breath, suspense you've ever experienced. It's not the action, it's the stakes. Is there clear and meaningful character development? And this for me is very, very important. For me, character is really the heart of it. It's about stories are, I define a story as one character's journey of transformative change. And I know here in a room full of editors, some may point out that transformative change is redundant. I will argue that it is not, that there are different types of change. And there's personal change, there's spiritual change, but what I'm talking about is across the board transformative change. For example, the stories, the movies that we love and that we can watch again and again and again. The Godfather is a story of Michael Corleone, who starts off as a young, naive college kid who wants nothing to do with the family business. And at the end, he becomes this ruthless mobster who heads the family. It's taking us through that change. You start here and you go there. The reason why the first Planet of the Apes movie was so great and the 2001 reboot was so awful was because what the 2001 reboot failed to factor in is that the first movie, George Taylor, the Charlton Heston character, the reason why he's going off into space is because he can't stand to be around people anymore. I mean, he hates people. He cannot stand to be around them. And then what happens in the course of the thing, he becomes the greatest champion for humanity and in the human race. It's that kind of change. Even The Wizard of Oz, you have Dorothy who starts out, someone who just wants to be anywhere but home, hates home, doesn't want to be there. And of course, what's the message of The Wizard of Oz? There's no place like home, right? So it's all about, if you do not have that kind of character arc, that kind of meaningful character development, you don't have a story. Does the second act build with compounding conflict? Compounding conflict is a term that I just threw on this principle, and compounding conflict basically goes like this. A happens, then because A happened, B happens. And because B happens, C happens. And because C happens, D happens. Too many times in these scripts, I was seeing there were conflict, but it would happen in isolation. There would be like this one scene of conflict, and then 10 pages would go by and nothing would happen. And then suddenly there's this other scene of conflict that comes in, but they're not connected in any way. And so, when they happen in isolation, it just basically kills the story. And the last one is, do the objective and subjective storylines intersect? Or, in other words, Does a protagonist only get what they want when they finally embrace what they need? And by that I mean, there's the biggest eye-opening experience I had in that first session with Al at the, back in 2001 was he said, there's this script. He said, you have a real gift for plot, but I think it needs more story. And I said, yeah. What's the difference between plot and story? Because at the time, I didn't have any idea. I mean, to me, it was like, yes, this sauce is good. It could use more sauce. And I'm like, wait, what? Explain it. And then he explained it. And basically, plot is the external obstacles that your character faces and on their mission. But story is what happens inside the character. Story is that internal transformation. So when people say, what a great story, now, if you go back to my encounter with a farmer, I can now, using this checklist, I can use it almost as a diagnostic tool. And the reason why my story bell went off was because it basically checks every one of these boxes. So this is a list that I used because I actually put it together because I was giving a workshop on narrative storytelling, and I said, well, I'll use this. And then, as the years have gone by, I found it's a very effective diagnostic tool whenever I would sit down and start editing the script. So now I'll also talk a little bit about that process and how it actually works, how it works when I'm a story editor and I have a screenplay to go through. And I want to start with a quote by Robert McKee, who literally wrote the book on story. And I'm not misusing literally, he wrote a book, it's called Story. He says, of the total creative effort represented in a finished work, 75% or more of a writer's labor goes into designing story. Only 1% of writers understand this. And it's true. So that's why I think, this is why I believe there is no such thing as a writer's block. Writer's block does not exist. It's BS. Here's why I think that. Because a writer has two jobs. One is to design story, and the other is to execute pages. And writer's block happens when you try to do both at the same time. You cannot do both at the same time. You will get lost. I've had people come to me and they say, "Can you help me? I get halfway through and I just bog down. I just can't go anymore. I'm just stuck." And I'll ask them a question, already knowing the answer. And I say, "So, did you outline it all? Like did you design the story? Did you outline it and plot everything out before you started writing?" "No, that's not the way that I like to work." 100% of the time, that's what happens. And I said, it's kind of like, imagine I said that I'm gonna build a house for you. I said, it's gonna be great. This is gonna be the most fantastic, amazing house you'll ever see. It's gonna be amazing. You go, great. Show me the blueprints. I don't like to work with blueprints. I just like to grab some lumber and drywall and a hammer and some nails and just start banging away, and just because I'm an artist, because that's how I work. How many of you in this room would want me to build your house? Yeah, nobody, no chance. And yet, people don't look at that when it comes to writing. And to me, that's why I don't. And this is my personal view. Other people can view it differently, and I don't challenge that. That's fine for them. I reject the label as an artist when it comes to my writing. People say, "Well, you understand, you're an artist." And I said, No, I'm not. And the reason why I reject that is because I consider myself a craftsman. What I do, I find, is more aligned with what a cabinet maker does than with what a fine artist does. And it's because you can't judge art. I mean, everybody can look at something and it can be three squiggly lines, and you can sit there for an hour and have people talk about how it moves them and how stunning it is and stuff like that. And nobody can say, you can't really say that's not good art. It's truly the thing. But if someone's a cabinet maker and you open the door and the door falls off, and the shelves are slanted, you don't say, oh, he's an artist, see, he's making an expression about it. No, he's a crappy craftsman. Like, he did poor work, and that's why I think that it's more a craft person than artists. So it doesn't matter whether I'm working with somebody experienced or new. The process is the same, and I begin by asking the person, why did you want to write the story? Partly because I'm just curious. I mean, if someone sits down to create something, they could create anything. Like, they could do anything. So why did you want to tell this story? And the reason why I want to know that is because a lot of times, especially with newer writers, it's autobiographical, or it is if it really happened, or if it is something that's based on real life. I want to know that, because I have to prepare myself for the battle when I have to suggest that they change it, because what happened in real life went this way. It would be a great story is if at this point it went off this way, and usually they say, but that's not what really happened. At which point I have to say diplomatically, I don't care what really happened. I care. My job is to make this the best story. It's funny, when I was a reporter, we used to have this little joke amongst reporters that our motto was never let the facts get in the way of a good story. And yet, as a story editor, that's exactly my job. It's exactly my job, is to make sure I don't mean to be to sound like a jerk, but I don't care what happened in real life. That's not my job. And as a writer, that's not what you're beholden to. You are beholden to making the best possible story, designing the best possible story for the most engaging, impactful experience. And if that means getting away from what happened in real life, that's just what has to be done. And so, and then I sit down and I basically take what I learned from my first session with Al, and the first thing we'll do is we'll talk about what works in the script, what I liked about it, what's there. And there are two reasons for that. One is because a writer, and you can't help it, as much as you say, give me your notes, sock it to me, I'm ready for it. Still, whenever someone is about to tell you, give their opinion on your writing, as a writer, you still kind of adopt this stance, right? It's like, oh no. And so when you start off with, this was really great, by the way, I love this character, or I love the dynamic that these two have, or I really love the world you created. Ultimately, what happens is they start doing this, and they start relaxing and opening up. But it's not just about making them feel at ease. It's also about making sure that they don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Because if you take the approach that, like, okay, I'm gonna come in here, I'm just gonna rattle off all the things that I hate about it, and the assumption is anything I don't mention, that's okay, you can keep. That may be your intent, but the way the writer hears it, when someone just comes in and sits down and goes, I hate this, I didn't like this, change this didn't work, what you think is, there's nothing good in this. Like, nothing works. And so sometimes what will happen is, in situations like that, you go back from page one, and because you think nothing was good, and I have to fix it all. So it's really, really important to start off with, making them feel at ease about what works in the script, and saying, wait, this is really great stuff. So, there are going to be revisions, but when you do, by all means, hang on to this. Then, when it comes to what's not working, again, I follow Al's example, and I just ask questions. Like, why did your character do this at this point in the script? And they'll give an answer, and sometimes they'll say, They're like, why? Was it confusing? I said, well, yeah, because I didn't understand, because earlier the character said that they wanted to do this. So when the character did this, at this point, it's like, you know, I just wasn't sure why. Oh, and since some, oh, right, right. You know, sometimes like the writer themselves didn't realize that there's a disconnect. So it's just a way to engage you know, the writer in a way that gets them thinking about it and looking for ways to solve it themselves. And that's the, I mean, that's the biggest difference between copy editing and, you know, screenplay editing, which is in copy editing, you can be merciless. I mean, if somebody gives me some text and just says, here, go to town, you give me my red pen, or I guess maybe track changes is now the new red pen or whatever, but and you just go to town, and it doesn't really matter because, I mean, it's just with the copy. But when you're dealing with somebody's script, it's very personal to them, and it's not just about, you know, fixing, you know, comma errors or grammar or things like that. You're working with something that's not on paper, right? It's a concept. You know, it's the story. It's making the story stronger. Because really, there's almost like two jobs to it. And a little bit later, I'll talk about the revision process. But there is story editing, where it's all about, you know, the story design, that 75% that Robert McKee's talking about, you know, and doing that. And then once you get there, then you can get into script editing. And that's where everything happens really on the page, where it's, all right, let's give the dialogue a polish, let's get the scene description tight, you know, let's you know, make sure there are no grammatical errors and things like that. So the other thing that I'll do after we talk about what works in the script, and we have going through the questions or observations or things that aren't really there, is I really think it's important to give recommendations. And I know other story editors, other screenplay editors have a different view. They say, you know, it's not your job to sort of give them the answers. It's more your job to get them thinking about, you know, the parts that need to be fixed and how that they can do it. And I kind of take a hybrid approach, which is I never say, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. It's more, here are some things that could work, because I know as a writer, and often in this process, I'm on either side of it. You know, sometimes, most times I'm the one giving notes, but I mean, I'm still a writer, and there are times where I'm the one receiving the notes. And I always hate it when someone says, yeah, this scene, that's not working. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So what do you see? What could possibly work there?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just not that. Yeah, that's not really helpful. You know what I mean? So I make sure if I say this isn't working for me, I'll say, now here are some things that could work in its place. You could do this, for example. Or you could take it here, or if you wanted to give it a lighter tone, you could go here. But I at least make sure that I never tear anything down unless I have something to suggest, to replace it, because, it's funny, people talk about constructive criticism, but I don't think anybody really knows what that means. I find that's misused all the time, because it's almost like someone comes up to you and says, can I give you a piece of constructive criticism? You're ugly and no one likes you. That doesn't really feel constructive. But in writing, that's a lot of times the way people just, react. Here's some constructive criticism. This sucks. Like, well, thanks for that. So I talked about the writing process, or the editing process, and I found that no matter what form of writing it takes, the process is all the same. That basically someone said writing is rewriting. And I believe that that's true. Because I've worked in offices where, we were doing, corporate video scripts and corporate communications. I've worked in a television room, I've worked on screenplays with producers and authors and stuff like that. And I find getting a piece of writing to where it needs to be takes at least 3, but sometimes 5 stages. And I know sometimes people sort of panic if, you present a first draft. I mean, this happens more in the corporate world, where they really don't understand the writing process at all. We're trying to come up with a concept for a client, and you go, okay, well, here's a first draft. They're like, no, this isn't exactly right. It's like, of course it's not exactly. It's a first draft. How could it possibly be right? I just sort of worked out the numbers, and I said, basically, your first draft should be about 60% there. It's not really going to look exactly like the thing it's going to be when it's done. If you're lucky, it'll be 60% there. Maybe it's like 40 to 50% there. But it's almost impossible to get it, more than that, because you're still test driving, the ideas and the concept. So when I look at a first draft, I'll talk to a writer and I'll be like, yeah, no, this is a good start. This is a good first draft. Like, okay, good, so it's ready? And I'm like, oh my God, no, it's nowhere near ready. It's a good first draft. The second draft is where it should start to look like what it's going to look like. And so I'd say, the second draft, you should get it to about 80 to 85% there. It's still not there, but after the second draft, you should be able to go, okay, this is what it looks like. And that's when I work with the writers, that's what I try to get it there. Then you'll do a third draft, or often we'll call it a polished draft. And that should get it to about 92% there. So then 3 drafts and you're still at 92%. What's the other 8%? Well, this is where I said, the first 3 drafts, that's where I said, that's the story editing, right? That's a conceptual editing. Once you get it there, now you can get into the script editing, which is now you can get to stuff on the page. And so at that point, it's not until the 4th pass that I would even recommend doing a dialogue pass. When I worked on the TV series that we were developing with my producer, his name Jordan's, great guy, love working with him. And we said, we were in sync because we didn't even worry about, the stuff like, the grammar, the punctuation, stuff like that. Anybody who read our first 3 passes would think that we were functionally illiterate, because sometimes there's not even punctuation there and things like that, but we didn't care because there's time to work on the story elements. And then at the end, that's when he'd go, okay, great, do you think you put a period at the end of the sentence? And I'm like, yeah, well, all right, that's probably a good idea. Yeah. And we do that. So do a dialogue pass and also a scene description trim. I guess in the screenplay, the screen descriptions are describing what you will see on the screen. And when you really want to get a script tight, you want to try to keep those as short as possible. So that's where the sort of on the page text editing comes in. At that point, you do that, and that takes it to 98%. And then the 5th stage is a good old-fashioned copy edit. It's just there. Are the commas in the right place? Grammatically, make sure that there are question marks at the end of sentences. When I write, I know the difference between T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-Y, apostrophe R-E, and T-H-E-I-R. But when I write, they come up randomly. It's true. I don't know why it is. Any. In fact, I was talking about. I have a call tomorrow because every year I work with the New Brunswick Film, and they have a program to help emerging filmmakers do scripts, and so I've been like the story editor there, so giving notes on the scripts and working with the writers and trying to get them to have the script in shape. And so every year I will do script reports, and I dread the call I have tomorrow at noon because I was rereading the script report on a script where the main character's name is Phil, and in the first sentence, I said something about, he's taking over his brother's team and he has big shoes to fill, and I spelled Phil P-H-I-L. And I'm like, they're gonna think I'm an idiot, but it's just, I didn't catch that. It's when I write. So that's at the end, it's a good old-fashioned copy editor. But those are the stages. Those are the 5 things, and it's difficult to find people who understand this, because I will give somebody an early draft, the first or second draft. I'll say, look, can you read this over and just give me your thoughts? And what I'm looking for are concept thoughts. I'm looking for story thoughts. And what comes back is a copy edit. And I'm like, thanks. But what I want to say is that's not what, there will come a time for that. That's not what I'm looking for right now. What I'm looking for are story thoughts. And that's really the biggest thing I said about editing a screenplay is it's both story editing and script editing, like text editing. But it's just, they all come in different stages. And I've been about a half hour now, so what I'll do is just after this next point, I'll throw it out to questions. But working with Jordan, the bottom line, your job as a script editor is you have to find a way to get the best work out of the writer. That's what it is you have to elicit it. It's not about showing how much more you know than them, and it's not about being sort of the stern taskmaster and stuff like that. I mean, that approach may make you feel better, but ultimately you have to find a way to elicit the best work out of the writer. And I'll tell a story about working with Jordan and why I think every writer should find a Jordan to work with, because we were working on one of the scripts for the series that we were doing through the NSI Totally TV program, and it just wasn't any good. And I knew it wasn't good, but I didn't know why it wasn't good. I knew it just stank. And so I was talking to Jordan. I said, "Go ahead, you can just tell me. You can just tell me what's wrong with this, And he said, "You know what I love about your writing?" Is I said, "You write comedy that's funny, but it also has a lot of heart to it. You care about the characters and what they're going through, and I'm just not seeing that in this draft." And I thought about it. I said, "You know what? He's right. That is what." I think the strength of my writing was. And he's right, there was none of that in there. And so I went back and suddenly I was motivated and energized. I went back and I just really poured myself into it. And it's funny because I thought, here's a guy who basically found a way to tell me that my writing sucked. In a way that made me enthused and energized and went to it, and I was like, great. I was like, yeah, he should find a way to bottle that, because that's the job. I mean, we had formed that trust and we had built that relationship, and he knew, I don't think that he was, pulling strings like that. He just knew we had a connection that he could be honest and we could talk about it, and he found a way to get and I'll tell you, the next draft that I did was much better, and it's because there was somebody who I trusted, who we found a way to connect. And so when you're a script editor or a story editor, that's basically your job, is you have to find a way to elicit the best work out of the writer. So I think my time for the talk part was up. At this point, anything that I haven't covered or questions, fire away. Sure.
Can I start?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about dialogue, as far as what makes good dialogue?
Sure. Good dialogue is really simple, but it's easily misunderstood. A lot of people say, I can write great dialogue because I can, write the way people talk. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually not it. That's what people think it is. Dialogue, it's all about subtext. It's not what your characters are saying, it's what they're not saying. That's the key to dialogue. You can write great dialogue if you write that down and put that up over your right. And remember that it's not what your characters are saying, it's what they're not saying. Less is more. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like subtext, right? It's like, for some reason, there's a phrase, you guys probably know it. It's not, you say that something is on the nose, you know, it's too there. I said, you know, great dialogue is like when you imagine that, you know, you're at some social function and you meet somebody of the opposite sex who you're trying to impress or engage with or stuff like that. You wouldn't come out and say, "Hi, I think you are very attractive. I would like to date and have a relationship with you." You know, you're like, no, you try to be cool, right? You know, you try to, you know, you would say, you know, whatever. I can't tell you what to say because I wouldn't know. But I was about to launch into like cool guy talk, and then I realized, no, don't have it. But that's what it is. It's subtext. It's all subtext, and also less is more. I used to do, whenever I would do a 2-day workshop, we would have a whole like afternoon on dialogue, and I always had them do the same exercise. I would give them a scenario and say, write the scene, and then they'd write the scene and we'd come back and read it. I said, all right, now go back, write the exact same scene, except you can't use any dialogue. It just has to be, you know, actions, looks, you know, everything unspoken. And of course they panicked and we can't possibly do that. And I said, well, go ahead and try. And they go back, and every time, 100%, their second versions are so much better than the first ones. So much, because it's like there's a look, and somebody just, you know, slides a briefcase across a desk, which says so much more than, hey, I think you know why I'm here. Oh, this is what the thing. Yeah, it is. But, you know, back and forth, right? It's like, it's just all the time. So only like just as little as possible. There's a scene, one of my favorite movies of all time is the Harrison Ford movie Witness. You guys seen it? Where he goes, great. There's a scene where he sees, Rachel, and they have that moment, and you think it's going to happen, and then he turns away, and she, whatever, and then the next scene is he comes back, she comes up to him, and he's in the garage, and he says one line. He says, "If we had made love last night, either you'd have to come with me, or I'd have to stay." And that's it, one line. In the original version of the script, they had 2 pages of dialogue back and forth. And I'm sure it was very emotionally impacted, but they realized no. The first scene happens with like no dialogue, and the follow-up has that one line. And that's probably the best example of what's really important about writing effective dialogue. So much of it is just like when I'm going through it, like when it comes time to do the dialogue pass, it's just get it out of here, cut. You know. Any other? Sure.
Would you recommend any courses to learn story editing, or is it something that you learn having gone through the screenwriting?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say. There used to be Praxis in Vancouver. Used to have a story editing program. I don't know if they have it anymore. The last time I remember seeing it was like 2013, and I've checked a couple times to see, because people have asked me the same question. And I can't really think of any that are specific for story editing. But there are lots of screenwriting courses, and there are lots of story courses. In fact, I mentioned Robert McKee. He has usually a weekend. He has them in New York sometimes, a whole weekend workshop just on story, which is great. He'll like break down Casablanca and other great pieces. But really, I think it's like one of those things that the best way to learn to do it is probably just by doing it. Or maybe it's because that's my experience. I mean, like I said, I fluked out into the situation where I was given the opportunity to give notes on these screenplays. And so after a while, I just kind of picked it up. But if you know people, if you have friends who are trying to break in as screenwriters, or they're trying to do it, and just volunteer to say, hey, listen, can can I, do you want me to give you some thoughts? And just basically do as much of it as you can, read as much about it as you can, and do as much about it as you can. And if you can do it, it won't take you long to kind of pick it up. Yeah. Sure.
I had actually a strange technical question.
Sure.
I seem to remember there being an answer for it from many years ago when I used to help with corporate videos, but right now a small part of my role is creating cheesy internal corporate videos.
Yeah.
We always have a time limit of 5 minutes, which of course is very challenging to write to. It's really short.
Yeah.
And I'm not usually the script writer. We're getting teams to present things about themselves, so I'm always trying to give them guidelines like, it's going to go really fast, guys. You can't write a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
So I do remember there being some kind of guideline, like this many words for equals a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, well, what I understood, what I was always told is if you wrote proper screenplay format, it would say one page of that equals 1 minute.
Okay.
So if you have like 110-page script, you're and they shot it exactly as you wrote it, it would come in at like an hour and 50 minutes. That's the understanding that I have. Of course, corporate video scripts, I've written them, and they're a whole totally different format. But you're right in the sense that people think that, they have a lot more time than they actually do. You try to get something in, and it's tough, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll look up that actual proper script format and work with that instead.
Yeah.
Maybe an easier guideline for people to follow.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks.
Absolutely, yeah. Sure, go ahead.
You've worked on TV series and
Yep.
films.
Yep.
I'm wondering what the difference is in designing the story for a TV series. You don't know how many seasons it's going to last or how long these characters are going to, how long their lives are going to be. How does that differ? Like, do you have to have how far ahead do they design the story for something?
I don't think that's really a great question. I actually don't think that because they have no idea. They always have to. You guys watch the show How I Met Your Mother? They had a plan. They thought that they were going to be canceled, so they had a plan to reveal the mother after the first season, and then they found out that they were picked up, so they went and just kept extending it. And I think a classic example is Lost, right? Lost. Those guys had no idea. They didn't I think Lost would have been better if they had canceled it after the third season. I think it would be great, but they were told to get 3 more seasons. It's a different type of storytelling, right? Because for like a single screenplay, you're telling one story. In television, I actually prefer the television format because you have to tell individual stories that oftentimes connected over the course of a season tell one great story. For me, the television that I love, Aaron Sorkin once described a TV season as being like a single TV season should be like a novel, and every episode is a new chapter. And those are the stories, that's a television that I really love, that tells me one complete story each episode, but together, linked together over the course of the season, tells a longer story. And that's what makes it a lot more difficult. Television writing can be more mechanical, right? In the sense that, if you have a show like one of these procedurals, if you're doing a Law and Order or CSI or something like that, those are pretty paint by numbers, right? Every episode there's, like Law and Order used to be characters not involved with a story are doing something, they discover a body, boom, first commercial break, come back, then you have the, investigators there at the scene looking over the body, blah, blah, blah. They find a clue to their first, interview, and they interview him, but turns out he's not the guy, but that then leads into the next guy. And every episode, you can basically break it. That's what we had to do at the Film Center, is take a TV show and do what they call the deconstruction. And when you deconstruct it, it's amazing. You could go how really mechanical these are. You know, like you take any show and you go, okay, well, every episode is 4 acts, and it has an A, B, and C story. An A story is the current problem that the main character has each week. The B story is usually these 2 prominent secondary characters, or this, and the C story is just a fun, light one-off that has no carryover and stuff like that. And you know, the first act always ends with, you know, the A story main crisis point, or you know, things like this. And like I said, then you take it apart and you go, wow, this, you know, this really is very, very mechanical. So they have to both, you know, sort of tell each individual episode and tell a longer story too, which makes it totally different. Sorry, there was another hand back here. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
For your own film, how did you choose your story editor?
Well, that's a great question. I actually was assigned a story editor when I was developing a TV show through a CTV, but fortunately the story editor that they assigned me was Al. So the story that they assigned me was Al McGee, who I worked with at the thing. They said, "Oh yeah, what about Al? You're gonna work with Al?" I'm like, "Yeah, great." So this was it. When I'm just on my own, you know, and I have something to do, I have some really great friends who are who have a really sharp sense of story. Some of them who aren't even really in the business, but they're just, they really have great analytical skills, and I trust their opinion. So, you know, I was talking about the different stages. At a story level, I have a handful of friends who I trust, who I'll say, here, can you take a look at this? And then when it comes time to the, you know, fine editing part of it, you know, the copy editing and the fine tuning in the last couple stages, I have friends who are great copy editors, and they're, you know, really meticulous. So at that stage, I'll give it to them and say, hey, listen, can you you know, just go through this and tear it apart, and it's great. But I mean, it's really about finding somebody. Like I said, it's about finding somebody that you can trust. Jordan, who I mentioned before, I'll usually send anything I have to him, because you know, we've worked together, we've, you know, been through it together, and you know, he's a great creative producer. Really trust his instincts quite a bit. Yeah. Back here, sure.
I had a multiple part question about intellectual property and copyright.
Okay.
I wanted to ask where the copyright adheres. What happens when a screenwriter is teamed up with a story editor?
Right.
And what happens in terms of credit, whether it's for a motion picture or a TV show? I want to know whether copyright is transferred when you, for example, sell a script, let's say, to a studio.
Great questions. Okay, are you ready? Here's what I know. Let's start. The one thing I can tell you is that you cannot copyright an idea. So this may seem really unfair and cruel, but in a situation where if after this meeting you tell me about this amazing idea you have for a film, and you haven't written any of it down, and I go, you know what, he's right, that is a great idea, and I go write it down, it's mine. It doesn't matter. Now, granted, you have every right to punch me in the face, which, you know, nobody would fault you for. But that's it. So it's all about, you know, because a lot of people will sometimes, you know, you have to be very careful with your ideas, because some people go, oh, but that was my idea, and it doesn't matter. You can only copyright what's actually written down. When a producer wants to, acquire a property, they will often give you what's called an option. They will option the script. That means that you have given them temporary rights to it. They are the only ones who can take it and try to get financing for it and try to do it, but they don't own it yet. they're leasing it. And then, if they can put the financing together and they want to buy it, then they will purchase it. So for example, in Canada, if you're lucky, you'll get like $1,000 option, for like say 2 years. They'll give you like $500 a year for 2 years to basically reserve the rights for the property. If they want to make it into a feature film, as part of their budget will be the script purchasing rights, at which point they will buy it from you, and you will be paid, if they are a guild producer, you will get Writers Guild of Canada rates. A feature script that's between $45,000 and $50,000. But then at that point, they own it. They have the right. On the Stevie Cameron book that I did the script for, that was a right-for-hire job. So what that meant was that I was working with a guy on Bay Street who wanted to produce this project, hired me to write it. So basically he paid me to write it, but he retained the copyright to it, because that was part of the contract. I was going to do a script adaptation for him, but that's it. With story editing, that falls under a similar concept, which is that it's a work for hire job. So if you give me your script and I give you notes and amazing suggestions, which, let's be honest, I would. I can't claim any kind of rights to that. It's just like I can't claim, oh, but that's my that thing where the guy did that was my idea, so I want co-writing credit. No, I either got a fee or waived a fee, or it doesn't matter. There's no, I have no claim on intellectual property for that. Yeah, and it's tough. There's a great book called The Writer Got Screwed But Didn't Have To. And it basically covers a lot of the legalities of the stuff, because it can be very tricky, and also it can be sometimes counterintuitive. Like you would say, it doesn't seem fair that if somebody can prove it was their idea and someone else took that idea, that they, but that's just the way it is.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Would you comment on adversary, please? The importance, or maybe not importance, of adversary in the story. You went through Protagonist quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, for sure. Your story is only as strong as the obstacles that your protagonist faces. So you can't have a really effective story unless you have a really effective antagonist to go with it. And any great piece has that, right? And there are some genres, like a lot of the action thriller suspense genre, it's really only as successful as the bad guy, basically, right? If he's strong and powerful and a worthy adversary, then that makes the eventual victory, if there is one, all that more satisfying. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because in a lot of stuff that I read too, that actually is one of the problems, which is that there's just not enough of a pushback on what the protagonist is trying to achieve. So yeah, that will quickly ruin a story, is if there's just nothing stopping your protagonist from getting what they want. Yeah.
And what are some of the differences between storytelling in a documentary versus a fictional script?
Well, really, I don't think. There are like obvious differences where in a documentary, yeah, you have to stick to what really happened, right? That's what it is. Although really, the best documentaries, the ones that are really powerful, are still, I think they're, if you go through the checklist, I think there's still ones that show a protagonist or multiple protagonists, like Hoop Dreams, for example, and that they're trying to achieve something. They're on some kind of quest. It could be an environmental documentary where they're trying to, stop some development from happening or something, and we're following their journey as they try to do this. But there we go, I just used the word journey. But that's it, is, you have a protagonist, they have a goal, they're on a journey, there are forces of antagonism, and ultimately, they will be changed either for the better or for the worse. So when I talk about a character going through a transformative change, it's not always for the better. It doesn't mean it's always a happy ending. They can be changed for the worse. But again, if you go through that checklist, I would suggest that the best documentary still adhere pretty closely to it. Anyone else?
More questions? Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for being here.